14-year-old boy clicked on a Roblox avatar face that smiled too wide. The next morning, 3 of his closest friends stopped answering his calls. He thought he was being haunted. The truth was harder. Watch until the end. This story was shared by a kid who used the name Aiden online. He was 14 when it happened, and he wrote about it a year later because it took him that long to understand what had actually been going on. He warned readers up front that the story sounds like a paranormal one. He said that for the first month, he genuinely believed it was, but it was not. And the real explanation was, in his own words, scarier than any ghost would have been. Aiden was the kind of kid who lived inside his computer. He had 3 close friends, all guys, all gamers, all people he had known since middle school. They played Call of Duty together every night. They had a group chat. They had inside jokes. They had a routine. The 4 of them were inseparable, in the way kids sometimes are, right before they suddenly are not. It was a Saturday evening when the routine changed. Aiden was bored. He texted the group chat asking if they wanted to play. One friend responded that they had decided to play something else tonight, Roblox. Aiden had never played Roblox in his life. He had always thought of it as a kid's game, but his friends were on it, so he made an account. He picked the username JohnnyOldG because he could not think of anything better. He joined his friends in a game called Rationalizing. The game was overrun with hackers that night, cars flying, players teleporting. After 20 minutes, Aiden told the group he was getting frustrated and wanted to log off. They said they were going to keep playing. He left the call. It was just a normal Saturday night. That was the last normal night of his year. Aiden woke up the next morning with a headache so bad that he could barely lift his head off the pillow. He thought he might be coming down with something. His mother brought him soup, took his temperature, and told him to rest. He spent the day in bed. By the late afternoon, the headache had faded enough that he could sit up and use his laptop again. He logged into the group chat to see what his friends were doing. None of them were online. He sent a message asking if they wanted to play. No response. He waited. He sent another. Still nothing. He called one of them on Discord. It rang and went to voicemail. He called the second. Same thing. He called the third. Same thing. He told himself they were probably still asleep. To kill time, he started browsing Roblox. He clicked through a few menus and ended up on something called the Avatar Editor. He found it surprisingly fun. He spent about 30 minutes mixing parts, changing his skin tone, trying out different hairs. It reminded him of building Lego sets when he was younger. The face he picked at the end was an option labeled with a name that made him laugh. He clicked it. He saved it. Then he clicked the button to discover other content. The page that loaded was a profile page for a face item, and the face on the page was smiling at him. A normal Roblox smile. He thought it was just a UI glitch and clicked again. The page loaded again. Same face, same item. But the smile was bigger this time. Aiden sat there staring at the screen. He clicked once more. The smile got bigger. Each time he clicked, the smile widened. The eyes started looking less like cartoon eyes and more like something else entirely. He told himself it had to be a glitch. He closed the laptop. And what happened in the next 4 hours was the part of the story he tried to explain to his mother that night, and she did not believe a single word of it. Outside, it had started to rain hard. The wind picked up. A few minutes after Aiden closed the laptop, the power in the house went out. He sat in his bedroom in complete darkness, listening to the storm. He started hearing sounds from the kitchen downstairs, the kind of sounds a person makes when they are looking through cabinets. Then he heard knocking on the front door, loud, insistent. And then, he later swore, he heard laughing. Aiden hid in his bedroom closet. He stayed there until the storm passed and the power came back on. He fell asleep in there. When his mother came home from work and woke him up, the front door was completely fine. There was no sign anyone had been in the house. He told her everything. She listened. She told him he had a fever earlier that day and that fevers can cause vivid dreams. She made him dinner. He went to bed that night and tried to convince himself she was right. But she had not seen the smile getting bigger. She had not heard the laughing. And his 3 friends still had not answered any of his calls. A week passed. Aiden's friends still had not responded. He saw them at school. They sat at the same lunch table they always sat at, but none of them invited him over. None of them texted back. None of them looked him in the eye in the hallway. When he tried to approach them at lunch, the conversation got quiet. One of them mumbled an excuse. The others just looked at their trays. Aiden ate the rest of his lunch in the bathroom. He started thinking the cursed face had done something to them. He started thinking it had cursed all 4 of them. He started Googling things he should not have been Googling. He read forums. He read creepypasta stories about the cursed face and convinced himself, in the way only a 14-year-old can convince himself, that what was happening to him was paranormal. Then on a Tuesday, in his last class of the day, he reached into his backpack to grab a pen. His hand closed around something he had not put in there that morning. It was a small folded envelope. He pulled it out. Inside was a single piece of paper. On the paper was a drawing of the cursed face. He knew, in that moment, who had put it there. And the answer was not what he wanted it to be. He did not figure it out immediately. He spent that night working through every possibility. The cursed face was specific. The drawing was rough, but recognizable. Whoever had drawn it had seen the face, which meant whoever had drawn it had been on his Roblox account, or had looked over his shoulder, or had logged into the game alongside him that very first night. Aiden's 3 friends were the only people who had been with him in that Apocalypse Rising server. The next morning, he confronted the friend whose locker was closest to his. He showed him the drawing. He asked him directly. The friend's face went pale. He told Aiden to meet him after school. They walked to a park near the school, and what the friend told him at that park changed everything. The 3 of them had gotten in a fight that Saturday night, after Aiden left the call. A fight that was not about Aiden. A fight about something else entirely. And in the fallout, 2 of them had stopped speaking to the 3rd one. The friend group had quietly broken up over a weekend. None of them had told Aiden because they were embarrassed about why the fight had happened. They had not been ignoring him because of a curse. They had been ignoring him because the friend group no longer existed, and none of them knew how to say that out loud. The cursed face drawing? That had been a prank. The friend admitted it. He had drawn it and slipped it into Aiden's backpack to mess with him because he had heard Aiden was taking the whole cursed face thing seriously. He had not realized how scared Aiden actually was. He apologized. Aiden walked home from the park alone. He cried the whole way. Here is the part of the story Aiden took the longest to figure out, and the part he wrote about most carefully when he shared this online. Because it turned out that the cursed face was real. Not paranormal, real. The smile getting bigger every time he clicked? That was a known visual quirk of how Roblox loaded certain user-generated face items. The same item rendered slightly differently on each page load depending on cache and connection speed. Aiden, sitting in a quiet house with no power and a fever in his body, had projected meaning onto a coincidence. The knocking on the door during the storm? His mother told him later that during major thunderstorms, the wind sometimes blew the front porch's old screen door against the main door. The laughing he thought he heard was almost certainly the wind whistling through a cracked seal in his bedroom window. The sounds in the kitchen were the cabinets settling. The headache that started everything was a stress headache. The dizziness was probably from dehydration. The dream he had in the closet was a normal anxiety dream. A worried 14-year-old's brain making horror out of his fear that his friends were gone. But here's the thing Aiden wanted other kids to know. Because when he looked back, he realized the cursed face was not actually the scary part. The scary part was something else, and figuring it out was harder than figuring out the rest. It was something most kids his age were dealing with too, and almost none of them had a name for it. What had actually been happening to Aiden that week was something a school counselor would later explain in clearer language. He had spent the entire Saturday alone after his friends left him in the call. He had spent Sunday alone in the house with a fever and no power. He had spent the entire next week alone at lunch. His brain had not been making up a curse. His brain had been doing something every brain does when it has been alone for too long. It had been trying very hard to find a reason for why the world had suddenly gotten quiet around him. A face that smiles too wide is easier to fight than a friendship that has ended for reasons you cannot understand. A monster behind a door is easier to be afraid of than a lunch table where nobody saves you a seat. The cursed face was not chasing Aiden. Loneliness was. And the cursed face was the shape his brain had given to it because the actual shape was too hard to look at directly. The conversation with the school counselor was something Aiden almost did not have. He went to her office once because his mother made him. He almost walked out the first time he sat down. But the counselor asked him a question he was not ready for. She asked him when was the last time he had eaten lunch with someone. He had to think about it. The answer was over a month. She did not tell him he was depressed. She did not tell him he had imagined the cursed face. She told him something simpler. She told him that humans are wired to be in groups, and when a group disappears suddenly, the brain does strange things to fill the silence. She told him the brain can make sounds in a quiet house, that it can find faces in glitching screens, that it can dream up monsters because monsters are easier than the truth. She told him that he was not crazy. He was lonely. And lonely was a feeling that other people had. The way out of it was not to fight a curse. It was to find another lunch table, even if it took a while. Aiden started sitting with a different group at lunch the following week. He did not become best friends with any of them right away, but he was no longer eating in the bathroom. The headaches stopped. The bad dreams stopped. He stopped checking his phone every 10 minutes for messages from people who were not going to send them. He logged back into Roblox months later, on a different server, with new people. He did not look up the cursed face item again. He did not need to. Aiden wrote the story because he said he had read 100 creepypasta posts about kids being haunted by Roblox avatars, and he had believed every single one of them when he was scared. He wanted other kids to know that the scariest stories are almost never about ghosts. The scariest stories are about losing the people who used to make a Saturday night feel like home, and not knowing how to talk about it. He said the lesson he learned was not do not play Roblox or do not click weird avatars. The lesson was that when your brain starts seeing patterns that are not there, when you start hearing things in empty rooms, when you start making strangers out of friends and demons out of glitches, the question to ask is not what is haunting me. The question is, what is missing from my life that my brain is trying to replace with a story? He also said he eventually reconnected with one of the 3 original friends. Not all 3, just one. They never became as close as before, but they got coffee a few times. They talked about the fight that had broken them up, which turned out to be over something small that nobody could really remember the details of by then. The other 2 friends, Aiden never spoke to again. He was okay with that. Here is my question for you. Have you ever convinced yourself that something supernatural was happening to you, only to figure out later that the explanation was much smaller and much sadder? Drop your story in the comments. I will heart the ones that take honesty. Hey friends, if you have ever sat at a lunch table alone, or watched a group chat go quiet, or felt like the world got weird around you for no reason you could name, you are not alone, and you are not cursed. Send this to a friend who has been quiet lately. Like and subscribe. There are even more interesting stories to come.